All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners public hearing for this Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. It's 3:01 p.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia, County Manager Amira Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and Clerk of the Board Amy Davis. Was that all audible, at least?
Yep.
Okay, very good. The purpose of this public hearing is to accept and consider public comment on the proposed amendments to and renewal of Ordinance 15792, Interim Emergency Housing Ordinance, originally approved June 25th, 2019. This is a hybrid public hearing. Those wishing to testify have joined in person, by Zoom, emailed in comment, or mailed in comment. If you wish to testify, please visit the Thurston County homepage online and select Announcements of Public Hearings on the left-hand side. The information to join this public hearing remotely has been posted there. If you do not wish to testify, but would like to listen and follow along, please watch the live stream through the Thurston County YouTube channel to help us manage attendance. Leah Davis, Associate Planner, will provide information on this topic. I will read names on the sign-up sheet. Assuming those on Zoom wish to testify, I will then, or the County Manager will call your name. You do not need to sign up in any other fashion. You'll have 4 minutes to testify. Time may not be given to another person. When you are called on, please state your name and address for the record. Public hearing is now open. Leah will present background information of the proposed amendment, summarize written comments submitted, and provide any additional information requested by the board. Leah, I see you upper right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Leah Davis with Community Planning. This public hearing is to accept and consider public testimony on a proposed amendment and renewal of the Interim Emergency Housing Ordinance. This public hearing is not to consider any current or future permit application for a homeless encampment site, and the action available to the board following this hearing is not related to any current or future applications for a homeless encampment. The public hearing and decision by the board are only for the regulatory language that would allow the director to waive some requirements related to permitting. This ordinance is separate from any proposed RV safe park or homeless encampment, and to date there have been no encampment permits issued, so no land use regulations have ever been waived. Following the public hearing, the board has the option to amend and renew the interim regulations or let them expire. The renewal will apply to the rural county and the urban growth areas of Lacey, Tumwater, and Olympia. Again, there have been no homeless encampments approved under this ordinance in the county or the UGAs. So first, a brief background of the ordinance. Interim Emergency Housing Ordinance number 15792 was first adopted by the board on June 25th, 2019, after the Board of Health declared homelessness a countywide public health crisis. On June 9th, 2020, the board renewed the interim regulations under Ordinance 15902, amended and renewed on December 9th, 2020 with Ordinance 15948, and renewed as amended on June 9th, 2021 with Ordinance 16026. This ordinance will expire December 9th unless the board takes action to renew it. Under the Growth Management Act, renewal of interim ordinances is effective for 6 months. If the ordinance is not renewed today, if it is renewed today, it will remain valid until June 9th, 2022. The board has reviewed the interim emergency housing ordinance at a briefing on April 1st, 2021, and received updates on this proposed amendment and renewal at agenda setting on October 5th, 12th, and 19th. At those agenda setting sessions, staff provided a summary of the minor amendments as included in the public hearing draft. The minor amendments as included are based on feedback from the prosecuting attorney's office and the CPED director, and would add language to the emergency waiver sections to clarify which fire requirements are non-waivable and require CPED director to consult with stakeholders prior to enacting any emergency waiver of regulations. So the options before the board today are to renew the ordinance with the minor amendments or to let the ordinance expire. An action is included on the agenda if the board wishes to renew the ordinance after this public hearing. Because there is no regularly scheduled board meeting on December 7th due to budget public hearings, today is the last opportunity the board has to take action on renewal of the interim regulations. So I'm going to provide some details about the ordinance, the emergency ordinance. The interim ordinance does the following. In order to facilitate effective and timely service in response to the public health crisis, it offers an option to waive some code requirements for permitted homeless encampments. Under the interim ordinance, and only with an emergency resolution by the board, the director of CPED may waive certain requirements. A waiver by the director is allowed for a 6-month period, but can be extended beyond 6 months if the board holds a public hearing and finds that a public health crisis in the form of homelessness continues to exist. Following is a list of requirements that can be waived at the request of a sponsoring agency during permit review. Limitations on size, maximum number of residents, parking standards, distance from a bus stop, right-of-way limitations, visual separation from other uses, keeping a log of residents, requiring verifiable ID, having a security tent, allowing visitors, maintaining a numbering system, and requiring liability insurance. Also, the prohibition of the use of heating and cooking appliances within RVs can be waived. The standards that are allowed to be waived are generally not related to public health and safety. The director does not have the option to waive the following regulations: the requirement for sanitary portable toilets, standards requiring structures to conform to building codes, fire safety requirements, requirement of the host to provide a code of conduct, requirement of encampment residents to sign an agreement to abide by the code of conduct, requirement of the sponsoring agency to self-police and self-manage, and the director cannot waive the prohibition of alcohol, drugs, fighting, abuse, littering, or disruption of neighbors. In other words, standards that may directly affect public health and safety cannot be waived. The renewal of the ordinance does not do the following. It does not outright eliminate any code requirements. It merely offers the director an option to waive specific requirements at the request of a sponsoring agency. And it does not establish a camp in the rural county or urban growth areas. On November 8th, the community planning webpage was updated with the public hearing information. Legal notice of this hearing was published in the Olympian November 9th, 2021, and a press release was issued November 22nd for this public hearing. As of 1 o'clock today, there have been 28 comments submitted to staff. Several of the comments were general comments about homelessness or related to possible permit applications for an RV site, and not related to the interim regulations and the action before the board. 18 comments were received related to the interim ordinance, with 6 in favor and 12 against. But I want to state that there is nuance in those comments. Some of the people in favor of the ordinance wanted to end. Some people against the ordinance want some different safety measures put in place. So it's a highly nuanced set of comments. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm available for questions.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions for Leah before we open it up?
Yes, Leah. How many times since its inception in 2019 has the emergency housing ordinance been used?
It has never been used, so no regulations have ever been waived.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
Leah, again, what was the date it was first enacted?
June of 2019, I believe. Let me go back.
June 25th.
June 25th, 2019. Thank you.
This is our 6th look at this. that lasts for 6 months. Anything else? Okay.
We'll have further discussion.
Yep. All right. Then we're going to go to public testimony. On the sign-up sheet, John Pettit first, Terry Ballard on deck, and then we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is John Pettit. I live out in Rich Road, East Olympia, and I happen to be helping some homeless people on my property, but that's probably in violation of some codes. But let's get to where we're at. I'm going to read to you a definition here first. Definition: insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. How many times have we renewed this? It doesn't work. The only reason why it might work is if a governmental agency like Thurston County was putting in an application for a permit at a location on Carpenter Road. Now, one of the things you have to recognize is that with this ordinance in effect, you as the Board of County Commissioners can give no protection to any of the neighbors that might be surrounded by a process that gets submitted by some particular applicant. Now, we know in the case of Thurston County made the applicant, you could withdraw it. And you did withdraw it based upon information you determined did not make sense. But did you know that directly next to that property on Carpenter Road, the city of Olympia owns an 8-acre piece of property? If this property was acceptable, then the city of Olympia would have the open access to go ahead and create an encampment there, which you've decided was not a good location and a good suitable fit. And yet they could go forward. The person over in Josh over here, the head of the department, he would be the one subject to making decisions. You've never had one of these applications go through, and typically it'd be because the cost involved with trying to run it doesn't happen through a private sector location. What you need to recognize at this point, as far as I would be concerned, is number one, is it doesn't work the way it is, and it doesn't really give the actual protection to the people that own property in and around spots it may be. Now, I guess a couple little quick notes. The greatest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Okay, well, that isn't about the residents. That's about what's going to happen with this ordinance. We're just opening up a door for a program that has never worked, and at this point, it's not perceivable that it'll ever work to the benefit of any particular community. You are reducing, by continuing this, and now, especially with the city of Olympia's site over there off Carpenter Road, potentially letting the city open up a homeless encampment right there where you've already decided wouldn't work effectively. I can only encourage you, if you want to create some type of emergency, which if it really existed and able to deal with it within the elements of your interim ordinance, would have actually happened within this time frame, that you now need to say, it needs to go in the round file, and let's start over and let's make something that will work. Something that will work not only to help the homeless or these different people, but also work with the community that it's around. I'm asking you that basically you just make a decision. You say, this one isn't working, let's create a new one. Let's just not make a couple little tweaks of something. Let's get rid of this one, and if you're going to create one from scratch with a program that'll work. But then the final part is create one that always has to come before the Board of County Commissioners to be approved for a location before a permit can actually be given. Thank you.
Very well.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Terry Ballard, and I've been a resident of Thurston County since 2004 in Tanglewild, unincorporated Thurston County. For something that works, my question is there any money going out of it? Okay? This organization right here, Thurston County Board of Commissioners, has an ongoing problem of spending money on something else other than what it was intended for. I'm sorry to say that helped out, that opened my eyes when you guys tried to use that as far as the Atrium building, which a lot of people need mental health. A lot of veterans do need help, okay? And to use funding where it doesn't exist, that really destroys me, even when I was a logistics guy for the U.S. Army. Interface Works says that 70% of the homeless population have a drug addiction. With all these requirements in these camps, do you really believe that they're going on all these requirements? I could say walk the walk and then talk the talk. Okay, this is not happening. And today, I found out that the Veterans Fund is helping people. The Homeless Fund isn't. The Homeless Fund isn't helping them. The Homeless Fund, any homeless fund, is keeping them homeless. The Veterans Fund requires that you be on Medicaid, requires that you be on Washington State Social and Health Services basic food assistance in order to use the fund. That's a helpful hand up. That's not a handout, okay? That does not keep them homeless. My whole venture is let's get to the problem. How many homeless people were taken off the street in your district? You don't belong to Thurston County collectively. You belong to a district. Why do they try to put, why do other people try to put things into your district that you disagree with? I find that a real problem, okay? Because you cannot control your own district, you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be here on the board. I understand you collectively belong to Thurston County, your Board of Commissioners, but individually you support your own district. Where's your support? Where's your support of veterans in your district? Where's your support of homelessness in your district? Where's the support of mental health, drug addiction, getting people off the street? I don't see a hand up. I see a handout. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. That's all I had for sign up. Nobody else? Okay, Ms. Janice. And we'll get to the Zoom folks.
It's too tall for me. Hi, Christina Janice. I'm a resident of Northwest quarter of Thurston County. Keep it simple and brief. I'm against moving this ordinance through. I think, as it's been stated, it's been in front of you guys. It's been extended multiple times with 0 permits taking place. I think this is an ordinance that just needs to go. There are so many other avenues. I know it's not going to erase homelessness, but we're not utilizing it in a purpose that's going to solve it. So I think at this date and time, why just keep extending something just for the sound bite that it provides? So thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Okay, let's check who's on our Zoom that wants to provide.
Okay, I'm going to go through the Zoom, and I'm going to call you based on the order that I have on my screen. First, I have Ms. Sue, no last name. You'd like to provide public testimony this afternoon. Next, I have Mr. Ulf Howland. Next, I have Ms. Anna Schleck. Go ahead, you have 4 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, County Commissioner Leah Davis, County Planner, and County Executive Ramiro Chavez. I am pleased to be here, though I don't have solutions. All I know is that we all have to pull together and keep doing what we can do. This is a very tough topic. And just to refer to a couple of earlier comments here, John Pettit said this ordinance doesn't work. Well, step up to the plate. What do you have that does work? I'm somebody that has worked on the issues of housing and homelessness for nearly 40 years. And the problem, it's a very deep-seated, multifaceted problem, and there aren't easy solutions. Otherwise, we would have, we would have wrapped this up about 30 years ago. From my tenure of coordinating the annual homeless census, the past 10 years or so, the primary cause of homelessness is economic. So if you're going to solve homelessness, you have to solve the economy. And that's a pretty tall order. The majority of people who reported that they were houseless, homeless, without a permanent residence, had either been evicted, had lost their jobs, or had rent increases that they couldn't afford to pay. Unless we can change the economic threshold that allows people to pay for rent, I don't know that there are any easy solutions. So we're basically looking at what other kinds of resources we can offer. Managed homelessness is far better than unmanaged homelessness. A couple of other things that I've heard, there's a lot of talk about veterans as if they're somehow the most worthy of homeless people. I can tell you that one of my uncles was homeless. He went to Korea as a very vulnerable young man. It was a very tough war. And while my dad and my older uncles came back from World War II to a hero's welcome, my Uncle Harry didn't. He served his country and his country failed him. And he was homeless off and on since 1953. He fortunately was taken in by a church, and he wasn't even living anywhere near us, but he was taken in by a church and then eventually put into a veterans nursing home the last couple of months of his life. But he served his country. There are a lot of veterans among the homeless. I believe the statistics, I can't remember, I apologize, but you can look those up. It's one of the many reasons that people are homeless. The other thing that people often say in these hearings is that this is a district problem. One of the earlier speakers referred to, if you can't solve it in your district, don't dump it on my district. I can honestly say, from having worked for the city of Olympia for decades, that the rest of Thurston County allowed all of their homeless, all of their low-income people without resources to come to our city. And we, as staff, as nonprofits, put together the best possible resources that could be developed. And they're constantly trying to find ways to do things that do work, to help people get back on their feet, to help people get the kind of support that they need for, job training, drug and alcohol counseling.
15 seconds, Anne.
Well, in short, if this was an easy solution, it would have been solved. And I really hope that the county renews this ordinance, and that for those people who think that this is an Olympia problem or another district problem, take a drive around at 6 a.m. to see who's houseless in your immediate neighborhood. They didn't take the bus from Olympia to get to your neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Bill Kirkwood. Would you like to provide testimony this afternoon? No. Next is what I assume is is B.J. Disencroy.
No, I have no comments at this time. I appreciate the ability to be listening to all the comments that have been given. And this is a issue that I would like to see resolved. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Apologies. Next, I have Mr. Clark, Olympia. Yep. Next, I have Mr. Dan Nelson.
We have no comment. Just here to observe and support the county.
Thank you. Next, I have Ms. Emma Dietz.
Sure, I'll say something. I want to echo something that was said earlier.
Ms. Could you just kind of State your name and where you reside in the county, and then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my name's Emma Deeves. Used to reside in Olympia. But this issue is really important, and the people who live in Olympia are, still my neighbors. And I want to say something that was said before. I want to echo a sentiment that, if we want to deal with this problem, just sweeping people from their current location, forcing them to move everything they own, many without cars, to maybe a location that's more comfortable for you. Maybe you don't have to look at them. Maybe they're less seen. It doesn't make the problem go away. It doesn't make the suffering go away. And I want to make sure that when we're using our resources as a county, deciding how are we going to deal with this problem, it's less about, well, how do we make it appear better by moving these people, by forcing them to move? How do we actually help them, give them a hand up, like someone said? And I think it's definitely a mistake to use our resources just to sweep them, forcibly remove them. I think that resources should be used to get these people into housing. And if we get people into housing, if we help people in that way, they have a lot less stress on their plate. There's a lot less stress for the constant need to keep yourself at baseline, the constant need for survival, and to be thinking about that all of the time. They will be able to help themselves more in a way that I'm sure many people want to see, and they will be able to do the things that many people like to describe as productive, like getting a job and contributing to the economy in that way. Or maybe they'll help their neighbors even more than they already are, because a lot of these people have to look out for each other, because that's the only way that we're able to survive is looking out for each other. And when you have a county just moving you to a different location, forcing you to do that, you're really sending a message to them that you're not really looking out for them. And I want to make sure that we're using our resources in a way that makes sure that we are looking out for each other. Thank you.
Thank you. I may ask for those who are not providing testimony to mute yourselves, please. I appreciate it. Next, I have Ms. Eva L.
I don't have a comment today. I'm just here to watch. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Frank Brown.
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Isaiah Garza.
No comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Ms. Janet Howland.
Thank you. I just want to say that I know this is a really complicated issue and situation, and there are no easy answers. However, I think we need to remember the people that live and work in that street, Ensign Road, how dangerous some situations have been to the employees that work around there and the patients that work around there. There have been fires. There have been employees getting chased by some of these homeless people. Garbage cans, they're entering buildings and leaving messes everywhere. And then you've got the people that are going over to the emergency room, St. Peter's Hospital, and all the situations with that. It's a sad situation, but we also need to take care of those people that are providing services for others and watch out for their safety and concerns also. Thank you.
Janet, could you please just state your full name and where you reside in the county?
I'm sorry, yes. My name is Janet Holwald, and I live in the city of Lacey.
Thank you.
In the county.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Josh Prohl, and I believe he has listed as no comment.
No comment. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah. Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Ken Rubin.
that my name, Ken Rubin?
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I live in Olympia. I feel like there's some real urgency on making a decision about this because we have some very cold weather coming up. It's basically December already. However, the ultimate solution is for all of our county residents to invest in housing for these people. And it seems like this will be temporary, but the permanent way to impact this situation is to build houses so they can have shelter and be protected. And that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Ms. Krista Suko.
Thank you. I have no comment.
Thank you. I have a raised hand about Clark Olympia. I called you before. You'd like to provide testimony. Call you again. Go ahead. You have 4 minutes. Please
Okay, yeah,
introduce-
my name is Stephen Hicks. I live in Olympia. I was born here, I've lived here my whole life. I don't really have too much to say other than having grown up here and witnessed quite a dynamic change. I feel like there's a problem that needs to be addressed, and there's a lot of deflection happening towards why people are in certain situations. And while that's relevant in a lot of ways, I feel like we are presented with a real problem that just needs to be dealt with. A lot has changed. There's a lot of Olympia that just, you don't feel safe going to these places anymore. And that's just sort of sad to see. I mean, there's whole corners of this town I just don't go to anymore. And I feel like a lot of Olympia citizens, and I'm not talking like your civilians, because a lot of them, you know, they're just not from here, but I know a lot of people feel this way, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, I have Ms. Maureen Hill.
Hi, I wasn't really prepared to speak, but I believe some of the previous speakers who spoke about the need for, I mean, the ultimate solution here is sufficient affordable housing. That's going to take years to implement, and it's going to take, multiple levels of government and private sector to accomplish that. But in the meantime, I think this option is just one of the tools in the tool chest of, if something comes up, at least there are rules and regulations and guidance, and that a quote unquote camp could be better than the current environment of being on Ensign or any other multiple locations in the city or the county. So I would encourage the board to at least have this as one of the options in the tool chest. It's not going to solve the problem. Ultimately, we need housing, but this could be an interim solution to all the encampments throughout town, or at least some provide. We can't move the encampments based on this decision from coming out of wherever it is, Idaho or someplace, unless you have alternatives. So if we have alternatives, at least we can get folks in a safer environment temporarily. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Ms. Melody Coiner. Next, I have Ms. Rebecca Wilcox, and has listed as no comment. Next, I have two phone numbers. The first one it ends on 1699. If you'd like to provide public testimony, please unmute yourself. Okay. Next, the next phone number that I have on my list ends on 0369. Please unmute yourself. Okay. Next, I have Mr. Fred Skidmore. And I believe I have exhausted my list. If there's anybody who I missed, please raise your hand and I'll give you the floor. Ms. Melody Coiner, go ahead. Please unmute yourself. That didn't work. That's all I have for you, sir.
Okay. Thank you for everybody who provided input. Discussion from the board at this point.
I have concerns about this. We're to the point. Talk about that.
Go ahead, Commissioner. Yep. There we go.
I'm not told very often that I'm not loud enough. Oh, okay. My concern is that we have had this ordinance in place now. I think this is going to be our third extension. No, our sixth, maybe our sixth or
Fifth extension, yeah, sixth.
So we're going for our sixth term, you might say. And yes, this is a very important issue. But my concern is that we seem to be in this situation where we're willing to hold certain segments of society to a different standard than others. I mean, right now, we're requiring people to get a vaccination in the name of public health. I really don't see why at some point we cannot require citizens that are in need and are addicted, if you will, maybe to substance abuse, or maybe they have mental health issues. Why in the name of public health we can't require these folks to have treatment and then help them to better themselves? The way it is right now, we're just shuffling the problem around. We've done this for months now. And I don't have any success stories to point to by doing what we're doing. But I do have success stories that I could point to where treatment was mandated. And I don't know how much time the chair is going to give me. He's going to cut me off here before too long. And so at some future time, I'd love to spend some time talking about how mandated treatment does work. Not pleasant, but it does work. It can be an alternative to incarceration. And most people will opt for an alternative to incarceration through treatment. And that is my objection to this ordinance, that if we want to have treatment, everything in unincorporated Thurston County is kind of outside the norm of where treatment is available. And so I'm not in favor of moving these homeless camps anywhere into the unincorporated area. And in fact, I'm very concerned that the philosophy in Olympia is, well, just let them do their thing. Well, doing their thing is very detrimental to the rest of society. And I want to hold these folks accountable and help them, but I don't see another way to help them other than giving them treatment. And if we're going to give them treatment, we have to keep them in a location where they have access to treatment. So that's my concern. I know everybody's heart is in the right place, and I also respect the democratic process. Should we decide to move on, I'll do what I can. I'm not going to take my ball and go home. But I've been harping on this now for 5 years, that we need to require accountability, and sometimes it's not going to be as pleasant as we would like, but I think it's the only way we're going to succeed. We can get them into housing, but they're not going to stay there if they aren't taking their medication or if they aren't restricted on their substance abuse. So I'll just let it go at that, sir, for now.
Commissioner Mejia?
I mean, you know, I see this as definitely a tool in the tool shed, because the point is we really don't have housing. We've heard over the week several reports on how the housing market is for people who are making a livable income and how hard it is for them to even afford a home, let alone for someone who is struggling with their mental health or with substance abuse. I do agree, you know, we need, I wish treatment was readily available, but you know, over the years, it's been so defunded that we are where we are just because of the past decisions that have been made that have led us where we are now. And, you know, we can't, you say, you know, we need to offer treatment and then, but where are these people gonna go while we're offering treatment? And this is the question, right? Where are we gonna house these people where they're receiving treatment? We don't have that. We do not have housing available. So I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, sir. I'd move to close this public hearing.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Motion is to close the public hearing. All in favor, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Mejia?
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Commissioner Menzer?
Aye. Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. Is there a motion from the board with respect to this proposed use ordinance?
Okay. Yes. Okay, I would move to approve an interim ordinance renewing and amending ordinance number 15792 as previously amended to extend interim regulations related to emergency housing for homeless encampments in unincorporated rural and urban growth areas of Thurston County, with amendments to clarify non-waivable fire requirements and require director consultation with stakeholders prior to implementing an emergency waiver for the term of December 9th, 2021 to June 9th, 2022.
I'll second that motion for purpose of discussion. Is there discussion on the motion, which is to renew the, restate the motion is to renew the interim emergency housing ordinance for a period of 6 months? Further discussion beyond what we've?
No, sir.
No. I guess I will just comment that every time we've had this come up, it's been tempting to want to go really big and debate homelessness, but this is really a really narrow legal issue about, are we going to allow ourselves the opportunity to have a conversation? A good example is the Ensign Road in the hospital. We didn't know the hospital issue was going to come up. We didn't know that potential access was going to be impeded. When we passed this in 2019, we didn't know in 2021 that RVs were going to build up and impede access to our regional hospital. We decided not to implement this ordinance ultimately, but I believe it was a conversation that was worth considering. And you know, without this tool in the toolbox, as a couple of people have said, there wouldn't have been any opportunity to assist Providence or provide any type of proposed solution to the hospital issue. And there may not be another one like that. And the fact that it hasn't been used, to me, doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means we haven't found the appropriate opportunity. It's a failure if you're thinking this is going to solve homelessness. Yeah, that's not what we're trying to do. That was never been the construct of this proposed ordinance. It's been just to give us an opportunity in an appropriate situation to use a tool. Again, we kept saying every time we renewed it, a specific proposal would come before the board and be discussed, and that's exactly what happened. There was a specific proposal about Carpenter Road and Ensign Road, and the board debated it, and we landed where we landed. But we couldn't have even had a conversation like that. You know, let's say there wasn't any opposition from folks at Carpenter. Let's say there was no surrounding businesses that would have been affected. we couldn't have done it. It could, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do it. And the situation might have been really important for people that needed to get to the hospital. So, I mean, it's just, we don't know if we ever will use the ordinance, but to me, that doesn't mean that we don't need to have the tool. It's never been used. Maybe it never will be, but it's certainly, I think, appropriate for us to have this, so.
Chair?
Yeah.
Could I make one comment? I'd like to ask the county manager something. If this ordinance was to pass, does the final approval rest with the Board of County Commissioners? So somebody puts in an application, they get the process going. In the end, the location of an organized camp, I guess is the best way I could put it, does that come back in front of the Board of County Commissioners to give the ultimate and final approval?
What you're talking about is two different processes. This talks about waiving some code requirements and provides the director of CPID to waive those requirements as stated in the ordinance. And what you're asking is the permitting process, which is we have well-defined process as to how the permit application should go through, that eventually could lead to an appeal. And the appeal can be heard by the Board of County Commissioners. So there is nothing in the process that an applicant at the beginning needs to have a concurrence by the board on a specific location. Because you will be involved on your legislative authority if it gets to an appeal for you to maintain objectivity on that permitting process.
Okay. So through the appeal process, we would have final say.
You always have the final say on everything that we do, Commissioner.
Okay.
If there's an appeal.
If there's an appeal.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, the decision to waive requirement A, B, or C made by the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, is he mandated to waive, is he have to waive as many as, what's the level of discretion that he applies to deciding which of those various elements he might want to waive or not?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the director, but on the previous process that we went through with the proposed Carpenter Road temporary location, he exercised a due diligence. And I have to attest to the fact he was extremely diligent. And he separated himself to be part of the conversations related to an application process because he needed to maintain objectivity, which he did. It was public health who was the applicant in this case. And moving through that process, he maintained that objectivity in order to determine what requirements he will be able to waive based on the application that he has received. So he has latitude based on the umbrella that you give under this ordinance, if you decide to approve it. And I believe he exercises that in a very caution and very objective way as to what waivers will be. It's a consultation with public health. It's a consultation with the fire. It just happens to be him be the fire marshal. So there's all those elements the director has to weigh in before he can reach a decision. So it's very diligent process.
And it sounds like what you're describing is a case-by-case analysis. He's not.
There is a case-by-case because each side has their own nuances and whether they can provide enough separation, visual barriers, access. So all that, each site has their own nuances. And I believe the director goes through that process diligently because every application is the same.
And this one that was pulled back recently, was that the first one that's ever been submitted? Or
the only one that will have been submitted. And it was a learning process for all of us to go through this process to how this ordinance could apply.
There's been a motion that's been seconded. Is there further discussion from the board?
No, sir.
I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Mejia?
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards?
Nay.
Commissioner Menzer?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, commissioners.
do we conclude this? We're done.
Today's meeting is concluded and
Yep.
cut off the live stream. Thank you.